Hello, I'm Paul Perrello, welcoming you to another edition of the Philly Factor. I think it's safe to say that reading is important. It's paramount if you want to succeed. Regardless of our age, reading is very, very important because it develops our thoughts, gives us endless knowledge and lessons to read while keeping our minds active. And for many, especially children, reading may be a struggle. It's a challenge for some kids. But in Philadelphia, there's a citywide initiative where parents and partners come together to make the promise to protect every child's right to read. Read by Fourth is a coalition of parents and more than 130 community partners and organizations that are involved in the effort. Joining me here on our program to talk about Read by Fourth are Jenny Bogoni, Executive Director, Read by Fourth. We're laughing because I should know it's an Italian name. You'll pardon me if I just refer to you as Jenny for the rest of the show. Jenny is the Executive Director, Read by Fourth campaign at the Philadelphia Free Library. Joining Jenny is Andrea Blessingame, founder of the Literacy Empowerment Initiative, and also on our panel is Marianne Frey, Chief Executive Officer, Maternity Care Coalition. I'd like to welcome you all to our program.
Thank you, Paul.
I think, Jenny, I want to start with you and sort of get an overview of what the Read by Fourth campaign is all about.
Sure. Well, thank you for having us. We represent the Read by Fourth campaign because, as you said, we are a coalition of partners, of parents, of community groups that have all come together with the shared vision of making sure our children in Philadelphia can read on grade level by the time they enter fourth grade.
I want to talk about read on level in a moment, but I want to go back to my opening statement saying that to know how to read is so vital today, not only for children, although we put most of the focus on our kids and making sure that they know how to read, but there are probably people that are out there today much older, adults. We hear these stories oftentimes that they dropped out of high school for whatever reason and they can't even look at a newspaper and read it. So it is so important and so vital to know how to read.
It really is. I think of it as one of the gateway skills to life, right? If you don't learn to read at a comfortable level, you have trouble learning anything else in school. Think of all the other studies that you do in school. You have to read something to learn your science. You have to read something to learn your history. Reading is the skill you need to access everything else. And then when you leave school, it's the same in the workplace. It's the same on your daily life. Choosing something at the grocery store requires comparing labels. Reading really is essential.
Yeah, you mentioned read on grade level. So what exactly does that mean?
Well, in our country right now, we use the first 3 or 4 years of a child's schooling to really teach them to read. And then the pedagogy shifts and teachers start to use reading to access the other content that I was just talking about. So to get a child to that place where they can shift from learning to read to reading to learn, there are kind of benchmarks along the way. And we want to see children make certain progress each year in order to know that they'll be able to get to that point where they can use reading to access other content. Every child is slightly different, so to say that the skills are exactly this to be on grade level, I'm a little hesitant to do that, because I don't want people to feel like they're outside the norm, but so there's a range. But we really do want to see this progression. And on the Read by Fourth website, parents can learn more about what skills we're looking for at each grade level.
One of the things that, and I think I'm safe to say that I'm the oldest person in the room, but when I was in grade school, we used to have those readers, see John run, see Spot run, see Jane run, and that's how we learned how to read. Everybody in my classroom spoke English. There may have been some children whose parents didn't speak English because their parents came right from Europe. But I suspect today that some of the barriers or maybe one or two of the obstacles that kids have today in our schools is that English may not be their primary language. So how does that fit into the whole mission?
Yeah. Well, learning to read is really a process of learning to decode. Right? It's understanding that a symbol on a page has a sound associated with it and having your brain translate those sounds into your head and putting those sounds together to create words. That process is the same no matter what your language is. So in any language, there are symbols that have sounds associated with them that create words. So the process of learning to read is the same, no matter what your language is. So what we tell families is the best thing you can do is use whatever language is comfortable in your home to expose your child to reading, to teach them that process. Then it's the school's responsibility to make sure that at that school, students are being taught English letters, English sounds, and creating that sound letter correspondence.
It's also important to talk here about the teachers that do great work and the teachers' aides in the classrooms that do great work in educating our children. But part of the partnership has to be with parents and guardians of these kids in our schools. And then I guess it's also equally important for some of the partners that are in this initiative, that we're talking about today. So can we talk about the parents and guardians' role in the whole process here?
Sure. I mean, it's essential. A child only spends about a third of their life in school, or their day or their week in a school, right? So much happens at home. We talk about home literacy habits, of what needs to happen to reinforce what's happening in school. Some of it actually, Paul, starts even before a child hits kindergarten. Those first 5 years of life are really important to learning to read. So the first thing we talk about is brain development, those first 3 years of life, and Mary Ann can talk about this much more when you hear about what Maternity Care Coalition does, but building that child's brain synapses and their vocabulary in those first 3 years of life, making sure they show up to kindergarten, knowing a few letters, knowing a few numbers, being ready to learn. And even the role of getting a child to school every day on time. Attendance is important. But then there's the daily routines once the child is in kindergarten through third grade of making sure there's books in the homes, making sure you're making a daily habit of reading together, reading out loud, and just making literacy part of your daily routine and making it fun.
I know one of the key components of Read by Fourth is the work of reading captains. And of course, Andrea, you are a reading captain, right? So how, right there on her shirt it says reading captain, right? How did you get involved?
I got involved March of 2018 because I had started my own initiative, the Literacy Empowerment Initiative, and realized that the work that I wanted to do, I couldn't do by myself. So I found Read by Fourth on social media somehow and found this free opportunity to volunteer to be a reading captain. And when I realized that it wasn't going to be strenuous and burden and something fun, and I could get tons of resources even as a mom, I'm a single mom myself, for my own child, I had to join. And I've been a cheerleader for reading captains ever since.
Well, that's good to know. So you're one of many reading captains.
Yes.
So everybody that becomes a reading captain, they're there because they want to be there. No one's strong-arming them to do this. They really want to not only help their own kids, but to help other kids in the community.
Absolutely. Reading captains are like the community liaisons, but we're all volunteers. So we see a need, and the goal is to actually get a reading captain on every block in the city of Philadelphia if we can possible. Right now, we're not at that goal, so we are always recruiting, and we're always trying to give adults information so that they can become reading captains and share those resources with the families in their neighborhoods. But yeah, it's volunteer. We're passionate about it. You'll see us at various different community events in different schools, passing out literature and connecting with parents one-on-one in our neighborhoods.
And what is the main responsibility then for a reading captain?
Well, that's what we do. We take the resources that the city has, especially through Read by Fourth, and we share them one-on-one with parents. Whether it's on our blocks, at community events, at school events, we're passing out literature, we're at the block parties. You'll see us everywhere, and that's our goal, is to connect with parents and caregivers to give them the same resources and the information to help their child become a great reader.
All right. Mary Ann, I want to talk to you as, I guess, a community partner then for the program. How did you get involved with Read by Fourth?
Interestingly, at Maternity Care Coalition, we had a wonderful founding executive director who retired about 1.5 years ago, and she was very involved with the campaign. And when she left, I sort of slid into her spot. Right. And so there was always a role on the campaign for a community organization that represented the population that we serve, which is primarily pregnant women and our parenting families with children 0 to 3. So.
And oftentimes, parents with youngsters at home don't necessarily know which way to turn or where to go for help. So the fact that there's a community partner like yours that's involved in this could make the difference to that family.
Absolutely, and I think what's so good about the participation of Maternity Care Coalition on this campaign is that primarily we deliver our services through an evidence-based home visiting model. So we have advocates that actually go into the community and go into the homes and are able to deliver the kinds of solutions that Andrea and Jenny were talking about and reinforce those messages and demonstrate how easy it is to have fun developing literacy skills, getting on the floor with your kids and really pointing out things around the house. We have an actual curriculum that models early literacy, and it is driving the results that we're seeing, the good results we're starting to see on the campaign. It really does start at home, and one of our monikers or our mantras are children, that parents are our children's first teacher. So what does that mean, and how do we model that behavior?
Yep.
And it starts at home.
I want to mention the website also that people could go and get more information about our topic here. It is readbyfourth.org, and that's the number 4th.org, readbyfourth, and you can find more information, and you could find, I guess, reading captains in their respective neighborhoods.
Absolutely. You can go right on the website. There's a whole section just for reading captains. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. So if you message us, direct message us and sign up, you can definitely sign up on the website.
All right. Jenny, let's talk about, I know there are like 6 different blocks here or initiatives or building blocks, if you will, for the Read by Fourth campaign. So I guess let's begin at the, at the base of this, this program here. So what is, let's begin at the beginning. I mean, what is the starting point for parents and children in order to read?
So the starting point really is that brain development we were talking about in the first 3 years of life. So a human brain grows the most in the first 3 years of life. It is critical that parents take advantage of those years to make sure that their child is set up for success as an adult. That looks like talking and singing and playing with your child. It's beginning communication even when they're not speaking. So when they're smiling at you, you're smiling back. You're pointing at things around the house. You're telling them already about your day and exposing them to language. That's the most important, and that's what the home visiting program that Mary Ann leads helps instill in families. We know that families lead incredibly busy, complicated lives. So what we want families to know is it's not about adding an extra 20 minutes into their day. It's how do they change the routine of cooking dinner into a learning moment? Yeah. How do they make folding laundry a learning moment?
We are so bombarded with social media today, with all due respect, but if it's not attached to our hand, sometimes I guess we just got to put that device down and pay attention, to our children, because look, technology's got its place, at every demographic, but sometimes, it may be a little difficult to put the social media and the device aside and focus on what really is important. Would you agree, Andrea?
Well, while I do agree, while we are transitioning, it is a part of our society, it's a part of our lives. So we like to encourage people to use it. Use that. There are apps, especially through Read by Fourth, where you can definitely use your device to continue those learning moments. We don't want people to become dependent on them,
right.
But if you have to use it or you can't get away, use it as part of your learning moments. These kids are learning how to use these devices at a rate that we don't even understand.
You're right, yeah.
They come out the womb and know how to use it, so let's use it to their advantage.
Yeah.
Find an app that does it.
Yeah.
And if I might plug one of our resources right now, if you love your smartphone, if you text Read by Fourth to 70138, you can get signed up for a program called Ready for K. It will send you tips on how you can turn those everyday moments into teachable moments for your young child based on the age of your child.
Yeah. The other thing is we want our children to be so prepared and so ready when they take that step, and whether it's pre-K or kindergarten or first grade, parents get so overwhelmed then, Marianne, in that, am I doing the right thing? Is my child ready for this? What if they're not ready? What type of advice can you give those parents who are confronted with those concerns?
You know, it's interesting. Andrea mentioned that digital is now so common, but I would respectfully say, pausing and actually being in the moment is helpful in diminishing some of that sense of being overwhelmed, because we are bombarded with so much that adds to the anxiety level. So what we do when we go into homes is we try to separate the technology and actually model getting on the floor, doing things that will be helpful, that separate the anxiety, just doing things to stop and pause. So, but in addition to that, there are a lot of resources. I think that Andrea and Jenny are absolutely right in terms of helping parents navigate all of the choices. Is the website, excuse me, not the website, but the app that was mentioned by Jenny. There's so many resources on there that can help parents that are overwhelmed figure out how to do things more quickly.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like knowing when to use what. There are times when it is okay to leverage the technology to help, and there are other times you just have to unplug and just be there.
Yeah. You know, the library system in Philadelphia is by far the best in the United States. I mean, if it wasn't the first, it was pretty much there from the beginning. It's, just taking your kids on a trip to the library. And nobody said you have to go out and buy all these books, and you could just spend an hour in the library, your local library, and pull out a book and just read to your kid there in the library. It's so important. It's such a bonding. I remember, when my kids were young, that's what we would do. One day after school, if they had a half a day or whatever, we went to the library and they picked out books and we took them home or whatever. But just sitting there and reading to them.
I would really encourage people to go to their neighborhood library, get to know the children's librarian. There are often story times, so if you're not used to or comfortable reading with your children, it can be intimidating if it's not a habit you have. Watch the librarians do it and pick up some cues about how they make it relaxing and easy. Let your children browse the shelves, see what books interest them. It may not be the ones you think, right? So it is a wonderful way to kind of enter that world, and the librarians are a wealth of resources and information.
I also want to mention that September is National Attendance Awareness Month. It's a no-brainer to me. The more your child attends school, the better the results at the end of the year, and they're going to get promoted to the next grade or whatever. But it's vital. Attendance is so important for the overall well-being of our students.
It is so important, and I think what we find is that parents don't quite understand the connection. It's obvious to us when we say it. If they're not there, they can't be taught.
Right.
But it can feel like, well, if they just miss today, it's just one day. What research shows is if children miss more than 9 days of school, even excused reasons, they are much less likely to end up reading on grade level. So you need to, as a family, think about the whole school year and how can you minimize those absences. In addition, if you're not aware, reading is taught the very first thing in the day. So see, even if you're late, you can really miss a key component of the school day. And reading it's an interesting process, learning to read, and kids can make these giant leaps, and you don't know when that leap is going to happen.
Sure.
And what you don't want to do is have your child not there the day that they were going to make their leap, right?
It's the other thing that it seems like we as a society, parents are taking kids out of schools and going on a vacation in the middle of the year. That was unheard of when I was a kid. Right? We were lucky we made it down the shore in the summer, and we were lucky if we went for a week. That was big time. But so is it possible for children to have perfect attendance? I mean, everybody wanted perfect attendance when I was a kid, and even I think when my kids were in school, perfect attendance was something that everybody really wanted. Is it possible, Andrea, to have perfect attendance these days?
It definitely is.
It is.
It definitely is. A lot of people just need to look and plan. It's the little things that can really help. If a family, like was mentioned, just looks at the calendar and you know the school schedule, plan ahead, iron your clothes the night before, pack the lunches the night before if possible, make sure you know what is for breakfast the next day. And then there are also resources like some of us reading captains and other parents on the block who will also be of support, and some of the schools as well are definitely support. So reaching out to those resources and making sure that your kid is there every day. I would love to see if we can get that attitude back where perfect attendance is what we're aiming for.
Yeah. Marianne, I teasingly say that when a couple has a child, they're expecting a child. One thing that they don't give you when that child is born is an owner's manual where you could go through the pages to find out how am I supposed to tackle this. And sometimes it's just sitting down and dialoguing, husband and wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, parent, guardian. I mean, you got to have that conversation. You can't be an isolationist. And you're dealing with a lot of single mothers that face uphill obstacles. But if they could find a partner, if they could find a group like yours that they can work with or turn to for help, and whether it's trying to get their child to read or strive for perfect attendance, that's important.
You're so right, Paul. And when I think of, again, the resources available through Read by Fourth, the community, a big piece of this campaign is the community that is built across the organizations. And the common thread is our shared vision around setting our kids up for success. But at Maternity Care Coalition, we also have parenting collaboratives. We have workshops that help parents come together, or parenting families come together and explore those unwritten, like nobody told me how to handle this. And you can talk about them in a safe environment. So I do think that sense of community is so essential to be able to, change the trajectory of some of the children, because it starts at home. It really, really does. And as we sit here and talk about the importance of those first couple of years, we can't emphasize enough how modeling what we do, we as the parents or the caregivers, children learn by what they see. And so if we prioritize reading, if we prioritize the discipline, like when you mentioned, Andrew, make choices such as doing things the night before, set up structures, because we need that in order to help our children adjust to the structures of an academic setting, the school, because more and more when you go into a school setting, it really requires you've got to sit still for a while, and if you're not practicing that at home, it's unlikely, or it's harder to do that when you're in school. And Mayor Kenny talked about that when he referenced when he watched children who had been in a pre-K setting versus those that had not. You could see the difference in how the children that had been exposed to early learning situations were able to adapt and sit still, and that's something that you have to start early on.
Yeah, and it's so important because at one time, like pre-K was just thought of nothing more than, and I don't want to minimize or be disrespectful, but back in the day, it was sort of like a babysitting service. Mom and dad have to go to work, and I'm going to drop the kids off at pre-K or nursery school or whatever. But it's so important that the lessons that these kids are learning, even in pre-K, it starts building that solid foundation that they need for not only going through school, but ultimately through life, Jenny.
That's absolutely right. What I don't want people to hear, though, is that we need to start actually teaching reading when a child is 3. What we really need to do is make sure we are teaching the children the skills they need to be ready to learn later. And sometimes teaching those skills is about play. It is about how do they do teaming together, how do they listen to the instructions, how do they cooperate, how can they sit still and pay attention. So all of that is really what we're about in those first 5 years of life, so that our schools can be successful with our children later.
In the few minutes that we have left, what type of advice, Jenny, would you give to a parent who may not be familiar with the program? They may not even be familiar with the program in their respective school or neighborhood. What would you recommend for them?
I would recommend you check out our website, as you said, readbyfourth.org. It breaks down resources and tips and information based on your child's age and connects you to our partner organizations. There are 137 partner organizations that are helping to bring these activities to life across the city. So figure out who's working in your neighborhood. Try to see if you can connect with the reading captains in your neighborhood or become one of our reading captains. But most importantly, I think it's remembering that we're all in this together. Every parent wants the best for their child, and we as Philadelphians can come together as a big village and help each other become a city of readers. So reach out to us, join us in this movement, and let's transform Philadelphia.
Quickly, Marianne, how does it make you feel to be involved with this organization?
Honored. Like I'm making a difference, like we're doing our part. And I'm very grateful that the baton was passed on to me, and I take it gladly and look forward to making any, more of an impact. And in terms of resources, I also encourage our listeners to visit maternitycarecoalition.org, all one word, and there are a lot of resources available as well for parenting families.
And Andrea, quickly, how do you feel being part of this mission?
Oh, I'm passionate about it. I can't wait.
I could never tell.
I can't wait to get more reading captains on board. I can't wait to go into the schools and these back to school nights. You'll be seeing way more of us.
All right, great. Well, I want to thank you all for coming in. A great job, great mission, and continued success to you and all your partners involved in Read by Fourth. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
My name is Paul Perrello. I want to thank you for tuning in and watching The Philly Factor. Until next time, have a great day. And we just sit there and do the cutaway.